Hello, school is now in session. Recently, the new Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, was confirmed by the Senate by a 51-50 margin to officially become the 11th Secretary of Education of the United States of America. She is a major advocate of charter schools, school choice, and school voucher program. In fact, she wants to have them dominate the American school system as opposed to the current form of public education. Many government officials, including the previous Secretary of Education Arne Duncan and the previous President Barack Obama, also believe that charter schools are the future of education. As secondary education mathematics majors, this will directly affect our futures in more ways than one, which could possibly cause substantial complications for our future occupation.
Betsy DeVos has never worked in government and has no experience running a large institution. When you think of a political officer tasked with running the landscape of education in the United States, you would most likely think of a proven leader, someone with established credentials and has a track record of effectiveness. When asked about her previous experience by Senator Elizabeth Warren, she said,
Mrs. DeVos, do you have any direct experience in running a bank?
Senator, I do not.
Have you ever managed or overseen a $1 trillion loan program?
I have not.
How about a $1 billion loan program?
I have not.
Okay, so no experience.
An example of a qualified leader could be a well-known superintendent who transformed and maintained the success of a major school district. Instead, we now have Betsy DeVos, who has spent the majority of her time donating millions of dollars to senators to support private and charter schools.
It is also known that DeVos has not attended a public school, only charter schools, yet she wants to have everyone go to charter schools rather than public schools. She nor her children have ever attended a public school or institution. So if you had a waiter and the waiter tells you that the cake is disgusting, even though he admits he has never tried it, would you trust him? I don't think so. Also, her family has billions of dollars and are invested in educational companies like textbooks, refinancing student loans, and online schooling that may benefit from her decisions. And because they have so much money, she has never taken out student loans and therefore is not familiar with the financial aid process. As a parent with children in public higher education, you would want an educational leader that had experience putting a child through school. In her hearing, she said,
Mrs. DeVos, have you ever taken out a student loan from the federal government to help pay for college?
I have not.
Have any of your children had to borrow money in order to go to college?
They have been fortunate not to.
Have you had any personal experience with a Pell Grant?
Not personal experience, but certainly friends and students with whom I've worked.
So you have no personal experience with college financial aid or management of higher education?
A controversial part of DeVos's plan is to fund private and charter schools and take away funding from public schools. Taxpayer money, paid by the residents, is used to fund schooling. It is the right of the taxpayers to know that their money is going to proper and effective schooling. When asked about this topic, DeVos is not clear on whether private and charter schools who are funded by government monies should be held to the same standards of accountability as public schools. When asked if all schools who receive federal funding should perform to a national standard, she responded,
I support accountability.
Equal accountability for all schools that receive federal funding.
I support accountability.
Okay, is that a yes or no?
I support accountability.
Do you not want to answer my question?
I support accountability.
Okay, let me ask you.
So we are here with Dr. Wolfmeyer, professor of secondary education here at Kutztown University, and we decided to interview him about the new Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. So, Dr. Wolfmeyer, what are your views on our new Secretary of Education?
I find it pretty remarkable that Betsy DeVos is the new Secretary of Education. She's someone with virtually zero experience in public schools, and she's at the helm of both public K-12 schools and higher education throughout the country. I have colleagues in Michigan, other professors of teacher education in Michigan who watched her destroy the school system in Detroit and throughout the state. So in a way, they had witnessed what's to come on a national scale, and it's a very grim story.
So schools are supposed to bring equality and kind of level the playing field for everyone. Do you think charter schools will help this objective or totally like undermine it?
Yeah, so I think it'll have the opposite effect. It's already been demonstrated to be the case. So if you think of it, the idea of a public education would, like as you said, would be to level the playing field. But if we've got we've got caregivers making the decisions for what schools they're going to send their kids to, think about how that's going to be a cycle. It's called social reproduction is the technical term, where those who have more means and education themselves to make decisions about their children's education are more privileged, right? So they can, quote unquote, make better decisions for their own children than caregivers of less means. So it won't lead to equality when you have caregivers, not able to all make the same, make decisions like at the same level. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. College are kind of like, oh, this doesn't really affect me because they're out of their public school. But in the research, we've seen that it actually does affect them with grants and stuff like that. So how more in depth will that affect them?
So the whole idea, like what she's, she, and it's not just her, it's like a whole bunch of people and organizations that are, again, I keep talking about deregulation. So deregulation of K-12 schools is very clearly on the agenda, just as is the deregulation of higher education. So they want to turn a blind eye to what for-profit colleges are going to do, right? So, and also how it will impact higher education is, it's one of the biggest challenges that higher ed or college students face is how to pay for their education. And it's sort of been, it's expected that Betsy DeVos is going to be on the side of the financial banks, the banks that are lending money to students as opposed to the students themselves.
Have any other countries tried using charter schools or school voucher systems and been successful with it? Or are there other solutions?
So it's pretty interesting. I didn't know this until I just read an article recently that Betsy DeVos comes from a town in Michigan that's largely Dutch ancestry. And the Netherlands actually is an example of a country that has sort of a voucher system in place where public tax dollars are used for both regular public education and also religious education. So it's really interesting, and people are suggesting, this is where it comes from for her. She's, got this Dutch heritage, and, they want to try to get it along the lines of the Netherlands. But here's the major difference between what the Netherlands does with their education system and what Betsy DeVos is proposing. In the Netherlands, basically they're saying, all right, if you want to go to a private school, if you want to go to a private religious school, you get public tax dollars for it as well. But that does not mean that the federal government is going to leave you alone. The federal government is going to look carefully at the school, make sure that the curriculum is up to snuff, make sure that the teachers, so they don't deregulate. It's highly regulated. So if you're going to get public tax dollars to use for your school, you're going to be subject to oversight by the government. And Betsy DeVos and the other folks that are on this path towards school choice through through charter schools and vouchers are trying to deregulate the system. Does that make sense?
Essentially, Betsy DeVos is not the right choice for Secretary of Education. As stated, she does not have the proper credentials nor the experience to run a very important department. Education is a sector of our government that makes the decisions that affect the future citizens of the United States and should be treated seriously. DeVos, in addition, has never attended a public school, and neither have her children. She has never taken out a student loan and is not familiar with the financial aid process. Although DeVos supports accountability, she's not clear if charter, private, and public schools should be held to the same standards if they all receive federal funding. Dr. Wolfmeyer, secondary education professor at Kutztown University, even discussed his thoughts, citing that charter schools and school choice will not bring equality to our students and will have a negative effect on the education landscape. Thank you for listening to our argument and hope that you will see our side that Betsy DeVos is not the right choice for Secretary of Education.